So welcome to all of you. Really nice to see you all. This is part of the series that we've been doing of showcasing the talents of the brilliant women that we've got within Super Troopers. And as you know, we've already seen writing and bookbinding and sewing and so on. And now we've got Rosie, who I think I'm right in saying has spent quite a lot of her life cooking professionally and demonstrating how to cook. So she's very well qualified to show you something that she wants to share with you, which is to do with delicious, I'm sure, festive mince pies. So I'm going to hand over to Rosie, and hopefully you'll be able to follow what she's doing. And as I said, make sure you've got speaker view on the top right-hand corner so that you're just actually looking at her. So Rosie, let me hand over to you, and you can take us through what you want to take us through, basically.
Thank you very much, Tricia. Right, so shall I press my thing a bit bigger? No, it's fine. Right. So I'd like to welcome you all into my kitchen today, and I'm going to be making, they're called baby orange mince pies, and I just feel that the pastry is so good. I really wanted to show you how nice it is. You can make them with orange, and so I'm going to show you in a food processor and by hand, in case some of you haven't got a machine to make the pastry in. And I'm going to swing my screen so that you can actually see the board where I've already got some pastry made up. And so I will just roll this out so to show you how I'm going to make them, and then I will go back to the mixture. So this is the pastry that's been in the fridge chilling, and I'm just going to roll it out. It is best to make it well ahead because it's quite a rich pastry, and it needs to chill very, very well. In fact, it's really good if you make it and then put it in the deep freeze. It will be fine to just take out when you need it. These mince pies are very, very good. You can make them anytime in December for Christmas, but certainly if you've got the pastry at hand, it just makes it a very easy thing to do. So now I'm just rolling it out onto a floured board here. You can see how nicely pastry is, the consistency. It's quite easy to use. The recipe will be up on the Super Troopers video for you to see, so that you can have it to make. Now I've got, to make these baby orange mince pies, I've got this tin here, a tartlet tin, but you know, little muffin tins there are quite a lot of them around now, so it's easy to find them. I've had this tin for many years, and you know, sometimes the old things are your favorite things. And so I'm just putting the bases of the pastry into the tin. Now you don't need to grease this at all, because there is enough fat in the pastry for it to just come out. And it's very easy to get them out when they're cooked. If you let them cool down a little bit, and then you can just use the tip of a sharp knife that just lifts them out. And I will be able to show you how that happens, because I've got my cooker on, ready to put this into the oven once these are done. I'm collecting up these little bits around where I'm using the cutter, because I can re-roll these again and use them. Sometimes you want to just make sure your pastry isn't too thick, because if it's too thick, it doesn't always cook quite nicely through. And I do think the baby mince pies are quite nice and easy to eat, especially if serving them at Christmas. There's so much richer food around, that possibly very big mince pies become a little bit too either filling or a bit too much after lots of other foods. So these go down very well because they're quite an easy little size to eat. And you'll see when I put them on the plate to serve them, you can find a nice decorative plate as well, which will show them off very nicely. So I'm going to pick up all these little bits and just put them in a dish. I'll bring it all together and pop it in the fridge again, and then I can roll it out again. So now I'm going to just cut out the tops. Now these are cutters that I've had, again, for a long time, but you can find various things. If you haven't got a cutter like this, you can even use perhaps an egg cup, anything that's going to fit your little baby cases at the bottom. And I'll show you how that works when I put them on. So just cut them out and then put in the mincemeat. I haven't got homemade mincemeat today. I wish I had, but that does take some planning ahead. And I've been busy cooking for my local WI. We've been cooking for a fair to raise money for the Cornish Air Ambulance. And so I've been busy baking for that. And also cooking. We've been helping our elderly residents in the area as well with meals. So it's been quite a busy time. And I haven't made mincemeat, but you can find mincemeat quite easily in various shops around about. And so I'm just putting some mincemeat in. Now, if you put too much mincemeat in, you'll find that then it does ooze out of your mince pie. So I try to put a teaspoon in. I find using 2 spoons is quite a useful way of doing it, because you can just control how much you're putting in, and just fill them up like that. I don't put any other alcohol into them because I think they're just quite nice as they are. Just a little bit of mincemeat. Now for this recipe, I do know that sometimes people put a bit of cream cheese on top of the mincemeat before they put the lid of the pie on, the lid of the mince pie on the top. I haven't done this here because sometimes if you're keeping these for Christmas or for serving, sometimes it can be a bit too much to have maybe the other tastes as well. But it's a very personal thing. And I know people do love it with the cream cheese inside. So that's something that you can do to make them a bit different. So can you see I'm just putting the little tops on? No need to water around the edges or anything like that, because as this pastry cooks, it will all cook in together and it'll just merge in. So it's such an easy thing to do. And I've got here some little ones I cut out earlier, so that, you know, if you are doing a lot of baking, just have them ready, and then you can just keep going with your rolling out and filling of mince pies. Now, the next thing is just to do a little cross in the top with some scissors, little scissors I've got, and that just gives it that little kiss on top and does let a bit of steam out if necessary. And those are ready to put in. I'm going to put them in. I put the mince pie tin onto a baking tray, so that just makes it a bit easier. I'm going to turn this round to show you. I've got a little Arga, electric Arga here, little Arga 60. So I'm going to put the mince pies into the top there. And I will also put some in that I've made earlier, and then I can open those out for you to see what it looks like when they're cooked. So there's the mince pies as they roll out. And so now I'm going to just show you how to make the pastry so that you can see that. So first of all, I've got a bowl here. So we'll do this by hand. And I've weighed out the butter. So I've got, in fact, half quantities of this recipe that you'll find further down the screen eventually. And so I've got the flour and I've got the butter. Now, it's always good when you're making pastry to keep the fat as cold as you can, because especially in this recipe, it's very, very rich. A lot of fat to flour. So if you can keep it very cold, this is probably how our grandmothers, I can remember mine used to make pastry like this with the knife into a bowl and just cutting up the fat. Now, alternatively, if you've got a processor, as I have there, you might just be able to see it. The fat here again. So I'll put the cold fat into the processor. This is a Magimix, but anything that just has a little blade knife is great for making pastry. And actually, if you weren't making orange pastry, if you were just making any short crust pastry, basically it's fat into flour, and then you just put the lid on. You see how easy that is. That's cutting the fat into the flour, and very, very easy. And you just want to do that until it looks like fine breadcrumbs. Now into the Magimix, I'm going to just put the icing sugar. And I wanted to show you, I have actually just sifted this icing sugar because it can be a little bit lumpy in the packet. It depends, you know, you can see how it is, but if it's lying for a little while, it can be a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to put the icing sugar into the mixing bowl and then turn that again. So that's now just waiting for the orange, and I'm going to add the orange zest and the juice. So we'll come back to my bowl here, and you can see that that is the fat and just needs breaking down before perhaps taking your fingers and just mixing that in together again to make it look like breadcrumbs. So having done that for a while, that will come. But you can see it is quite nice having a little bit of help with the processor. Just make it an easier process. Right, now I'll come back to that, and this is the orange. So we've got, I've got a large orange here, and I've just got an old-fashioned grater, which I find easier than the plain graters, which can be a little bit hard on your fingers if you snip them. So I'm going over this orange, just grating it like this. I want to get all the zest off. And when you're doing this with oranges or lemons, it's best if you can just get the zest off and not the pith, because the pith, the white bit, is a little bitter, and all the flavour of the orange really is in the zest, and you'll smell it as you're grating it, because the oils are released and it just is a really, really lovely smell. In fact, the oil will also go on your hands, but that's not a problem. Just keep going over and over the orange to get as much off as you can, because this is going to make a difference to the flavour of your pastry. If you have large patches where you haven't grated it, then you're not getting the full amount into your mixture. So it's just a little good exercise for the hands and the wrists. This is quite a big orange, but I'll get off as much as I can. And then this sort of thing does dry out, so actually it's best to do as you're using it. But really, for any cooking and for what I've done today, I'd weighed out all the butter ahead and I'd put it in the fridge ready to get cool, and I'd weighed out the flours. So if you can do that sort of preparation in the beginning, it does help when you're cooking, because then you've just got everything weighed out. It's the weighing out really in the preparation, which is takes more time. And so if you can have it weighed out, then it takes a little bit less time when you want to put it together and make your pastry. And then when your pastry is made, you can just get it out of the fridge or the freezer as you want it, which is great this time of the year. You might find, oh, I can take some mince pies round to somebody, or I can give them to some neighbours, especially this year with all the problems of travelling. Now, I've a really good tip here is, instead of using a knife to get your grated orange off your grater, I've just got a little brush. Now, this brush is years and years and years old, and you can probably tell. And all I use it for is grating, for brushing the orange off the grater, or even lemons off the grater. So that's why it's quite a colour. It's gone a sort of orangey colour, because it picks up the colour from the zest. And then you can just easily brush it down, and that means that you can get every bit of zest away from the grater. And again, every bit of zest is going to flavour your pastry. And all you've got to flavour your pastry is orange zest and orange juice. There's no other liquid that goes into it. So when it bakes, you get that lovely flavour. And I think pastries are really interesting when they have a flavour. I love making cheese pastry, little cheese pastry canapés, and this really orange pastry is delicious to just bring out that flavour against the mincemeat. So I'm going to put my orange into the Magimix here. I'll put half in there, and then I'll put half into the other bowl as well, so that I've got two mixtures. Then put the lid on, and again, just turn it around so that the orange is taken in. Now the next thing is to get the juice from the orange. So there we go, there's the juicer. So I'm just going to cut the orange so that we'll go so you can get the orange out here. This is a really lovely juicer. It's a Brabante one, and I've had this a very long time as well, but you can really get the juice out and you've got some sort of leverage to really do that. I'm going to take my little brush again to make sure I can get all the juice through. Now this is quite a large orange and you might find you don't need all the juice, even if you're doing the full quantity in one go. I'm doing the full quantity in 2 halves, half in the processor and half by hand. And you might not need all the juice, but what I do is I then drink the other little bit of fresh orange juice, so it's never wasted. It's really delicious. And you can just push the orange through to get all the juice out. Now I'm just smelling that the mince pies might be looking quite done. So not quite cooked yet, but these are the little ones that I've heated up. And in fact, I'm going to just put them onto a plate here so that you can see. These are ones I made earlier. And I'm going to put the icing sugar, just refresh them. And it's always quite a good idea to put the mince pies on just do them on a little cooling rack over a plate, so that when you come to serve them up, you're not then just putting them onto, they can go onto the plate cleanly, and they've all got their little bit more icing sugar on top, which makes them inviting. So this is my little serving dish, but it's nice to use Christmassy dishes as well. So now I'm going to just get these hot ones away. This is my baking cooling rack here. These had a little bit of icing sugar on already, so I'm going to just put some more on there. And I'll get a plate to show you what they look like when they're opened up. So we'll pop one on the plate. And you can see the mince pie opened up there with the little inside, so they're quite baby. Right, now I'm going to add the orange juice to the processor. Before I do that, I'm going to just check my mince pies here, and these are ready. It depends how hot your oven is as to how long they take, and so you'll be able to measure it out. The little ones don't take too long to do. Right, now I'm going to turn this round so that hopefully you can see the processor. Now, when you're adding the liquid, and this can be by the knife as well, it's just until it starts to come together. And sometimes you think you need more, but just let it run. So the pastry has come together on around the bowl. I can feel it. So I'll just show you what it looks like. So you can see that the pastry has just come together like that, and it's quite soft when you first take it out. And this is why it needs to go into the fridge for quite a few hours, just to get it to the consistency that you saw me rolling out just earlier. And this is something that these little orange pastry mince pies are something that traditionally my granddaughter Sophia and I like to do just as we're coming to Christmas. And I've got some pastry made up so that I'm hoping, again, I can do it with her this year. But I take the pastry with me and then we can roll it out and fill the trays together. Now at this stage, you can see it's quite soft. It's almost a little bit maybe wet, but that's because you've put the juice in. So don't worry about it, just bring it together. Having put a little bit of flour onto your board, and soft as a baby's bottom. So that's your pastry made, and that will go. I have used one of these little containers which I've had a Christmas pudding in, just to put it in the fridge, but you can wrap it in some greaseproof paper or tin foil, and that will certainly keep it. So back to this one. That's going to take me a little bit longer, but once you've got your butter broken down, you can then add your icing sugar, and then by stirring it around, you can add your grated lemon zest, your grated orange zest, and then the juice, and you will get the same dough, same pastry as that. So I hope that gives you a good idea of how to put the pastry together, and that you might all have a go at doing that. I'm now going to just present the screen again so that you can see what I've got here for the mince pies. And so this is the plate. And that is the mince pie which we cut. But I'm going to probably cut one of these as well so that you can see. See that one as well. So I've got the orange pastry mince pies. There they are. And now I can bring the screen up and hopefully you can see me again. And those are the orange pastry baby mince pies, festive mince pies. So I hope that those might be something nice that you can maybe have at Christmas time. And maybe that's given you an idea of how to make pastry quite easily anyway. Not difficult, very, very good if you've got a food processor, but don't worry if you haven't, because it's just a matter of cutting the fat into the flour.
Well done. That was really wonderful. Well done. I love the way that you sequenced it so that we saw everything, but you did it so that you could bake the mince pies and then you went back to making the pastry, which was really clever. It was like a proper demonstration on a television program. I felt like I was, I was being Nigellaed or Jamie'd, but I was actually being Rosied. So I think we might have one or two questions. Let's go to Bryony and find out what she's got, just to make sure that we answer anybody that's watching.
Yeah, we've had a few questions, and as we said at the beginning, we'll pop the recipe in Super Troopers, but for those who aren't the Super Trooper members, if you do want the recipe, if you just email marketing@lookfabulousforever.com, we can share that recipe with you. So Rosie, we've had a question from Claire. I think we want to know basically, how do you work out the diameter of the tin, so the diameter of the tin holes compared to the pastry rounds? So how much larger do the cutters need to be than the holes?
Yes, that's a good question, because now I think you can get these little tins much more easily in a hardware shop or in the supermarkets, which are very good now at doing them. I've got my little tin here, so I can show you that the base of the cutter, actually I have to use my oven gloves here, the base cutter really is about the width or the circumference of the little hole. Okay. And that, if they're not too deep, that will give you the right circle. I have got a larger cutter, and if you do that, it's fine. You can see that with these ones I've cooked, how these caught a little bit at this side, but can you see how the lids have actually just gone back in? And if I just lift this one out with the edge of a knife, I mean, it's really easy to come out. And then for the top of the lid, this one just goes, it's just a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you get them in cutting sets. I think this one might have belonged to my grandmother, because when I was looking for them to fit, I think that was one of them. But this is a new one from a little set of cutters. So I made these round. I have got actually here, I've got the opposite. I've got a straight cutter as the bottom and a little frilly cutter for the top. So I think when Sophia and I are doing them together, we've both got some sets each, and we do different mixtures, you know, whether they're frilly tops or plain tops. Yeah. So I think you can find those now, not so difficult as maybe they used to be.
Mm. And another question about the equipment.
Can I just come in for a second? Just to put my oar in, as somebody who has almost no kitchen equipment beyond a knife, that actually you gave the tip about the egg cup, but in fact any glass, you know, if you've got a set of glasses are quite good if you if you don't want to, if you haven't got any cutters, because glasses tend to be different sizes and they will cut into pastry quite effectively.
Absolutely, yes they will. I was just looking for one, but they will. That's a good idea, Tricia. Well done.
I've certainly done that, because if I want to make something, I tend to have to go to Lakeland. I've got one within the distance of my house, and actually buy every single bit of equipment that I need, because I've never got anything. But occasionally you can improvise, and certainly things like glasses are quite good for cutting. Mm-hmm. I've done that.
Yes, very good. I had I think when I first moved here, I hadn't got my cutters unpacked, and actually I used an egg cup because I needed to make the lids. But you know, it's not too difficult to do that. And even you know, there are lots of little things that we've got in the kitchen that you could use. So that's an idea. Very good.
Perfect.
Thanks, Brian.
Another question: would you use silicone trays? Judith wants to know.
Well, it's funny. I actually sold some silicone trays when I was cooking. Somebody came to me and wanted me to sell them, but you know, I just never find that the conduction of heat is as good. Mm-hmm. When you've got metal, the heat goes straight through. Mm-hmm. And even in the Arga, we do use silicone mats or you know, things to line cake tins, but I still find that they don't seem to cook quite through as I'm used to. Yeah. So by all means try, but I think with pastry it needs to be cooked at quite a high, you know, the conduction is important, because then you don't get your soggy bottom that Mary Berry would talk about, because it's cooked through. Yeah. And I think sometimes with silicone that can happen. Yeah. But I'd be very happy to hear from anybody who's had good successes. I've actually got rid of all mine now.
Someone would love to know, Sue would like to know, how much cream cheese should you use in the recipe if you did want to add that dollop of cream cheese you were talking about?
Right. Well, I think for the size we've got here, I would say this little teaspoon. If you put too much, it's going to actually spill over, and so a small one. And I think I don't know if we're allowed to mention it, but you know, the Philly type cream cheese is fine, or you might find another one that's made, you know, in a supermarket make, but that's soft cheese anyway.
Okay, and another recipe question from Jill. She wants to know whether you always use butter, or can you also use part lard?
Well, part lard is making a short crust pastry, and so that would be more for a pie. Part lard makes lovely pastry, but certainly for these, I would use butter, because the actual you know, you want the taste to be good, and lard is fine if it's more of a short crust, maybe a savoury pastry. But for the sweet pastries, really, you should use butter, and I use real butter as well. I use the hard block butter, because if you use the softer butters, they change and they make your mixture different. And so I just get, you know, a hard block butter. It can be its own make, or I tend to buy Cornish butter now. I'm down here in Cornwall, supporting the industry. So yes, butter is good. Butter is good.
And one final question, Julia wants to know, how long were your mince pies in the oven for, and also what temperature did you use?
Yes, well, my oven is a baking oven, so it should be about 150, but they cooked quite quickly, and I didn't turn them from back to front, which you do sometimes do in an Arga. So I would say that they were probably in about, I would look after about 10 to 15 minutes actually. But you know, it's sometimes when I find when I put this Arga oven on, it can be quite hot at the beginning until it sort of settles down. I'm going to be baking mince pies really for the rest of the day, because I want to make some. I promised my post lady I would make some mince pies, and so I'm going to use up this pastry now to do that. So while the oven's on, I do use a timer, I have to say, because sometimes I can be doing something else and then I forget. These are actually fine, because these little ones here, which look a bit golden, but by the time you've put your icing sugar on, you know, if you're making something at Christmas, whatever it is, icing sugar is brilliant to cover up a multitude of sins. And actually with the mince pies, it does make them look festive as well. Sometimes when I'm storing them in an airtight container, as I will with these now, you might find that the icing sugar gets a little bit sort of, you know, dusts off. So that's why I just showed you how I refresh them, just to replate them. And then that makes it, you know, nice again. Perfect.
Okay, thank you so much.
So Rosie, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure everybody really enjoyed that. We had a great audience for it. We had about 55, 56 people.
Oh wow!
Really brilliant. And I've got a feeling that we could perhaps ask you back maybe sometime in the spring or whatever. Maybe you know, some suggestion from you, but which
yes,
share.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure there's lots of people out there who would love some help. And I love all the little hints and tips, like using that special brush that you keep for the zest. And it's when you see a proper cook like you are, you're full of shortcuts and ways to do things better. And you know, I certainly for one could learn an awful lot from you. I love the fact that you didn't have to mess around with egg washes or you also didn't have to mess around with what's the thing, when you butter the tray, you know.
Oh, I know. Yes, no, you don't need to do that. I think lots of people get worried about that, and that is the problem, that actually things can be a bit more simple. I think what's nice is, having had my fantastic cookery training, you then come out into the wide world and you actually find, you know, there are shortcuts, or there are bits that you can make easier for yourself. And when I learnt to cook, we didn't have Magimixes. We had to do everything by hand, but that's not a bad thing, because you know how it really should be. But I think the brushing, the zest off the grater, if I had a penny for every time anybody said how fantastic, I would be quite a millionaire. It's amazing how something as simple as that can really make life a bit easier. And I mean, before I worked it out for myself, I would use a knife, and you know, you blunt the knife and you wouldn't get the zest off, and so it can be quite annoying. But I'd be very happy, Tricia, with anybody's suggestions of what they might like to see. It's quite easy to set up here, and you know, there are ideas for. I've got a little book that I wrote, which has got some of my favourite recipes in it, and things that I did at college actually, which now I went to the Cordon Bleu school, and they can be simplified and sort of used, and you know, I think that's really nice. Using fresh food, which is what you said with the talk with Robin Ellis. Fresh food, good food is excellent, and you know, and then we can all keep healthy, and we can support our local farmers as well, which is great.
Absolutely. Well, I almost feel a series coming on, Rosie. So you never know. What we'll do is sometime in the new year, we'll ask on Super Troopers for some things that people would love to see. You know, what that might be, and I'm sure you'll have the solution. But it would be wonderful, and thank you. That was brilliant, and well done.
Tricia, I'd just like to say this was sent to me by my cousin. It's blood orange liqueur. And he put on the bottle, Rosie's Recovery. So I'd just like to wish you all a happy Christmas with this blood orange liqueur. It sounds lovely, but there's a lovely recipe book with it as well. So I think that's quite fun.
A lovely way to end, Rosie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for everything you've done for us as well. Brilliant. Thank you, Tricia. Really kind.
So
thank you, Bryony.
Happy Christmas to you. And I'll also, because I don't, Bryony, I'm right in saying we haven't got any more sessions until after Christmas.
This is our final one of the year, everyone. So thank you.
Yes, so happy Christmas. And thank you so much, Tricia, for all you've done for us. It's been a very, very good year in some ways, that we've been able to learn so much. And you've helped us do that, which is great.
Well, that's very sweet, Rosie. So I wish you and everybody that's in on this call a very, very happy Christmas, and obviously a very happy New Year. And I should look forward to seeing you into 2021, and fingers crossed that 2021 proves to be a lot better than 2020. So,
absolutely.
Bye-bye, Rosie.
Brilliant. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Happy Christmas,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.